A hand hangs limp, stained red. As dark energy swirls through the air, a ritual reaches its grim conclusion. A sacrifice is offered, her life force drained away. The masked figures believe in a higher power, a power that dwarfs all existence, one that humbles even the gods themselves. And we meet one now, the pagan god, Eidos. He casually asks his companion about their meal. His friend, a tiny bird god named Io, seems to approve. Eidos agrees the soul was underwhelming. He admits that sometimes he wonders if there's anything else on the menu, but Io reminds him this is all they've ever known. They can't choose their followers, or the grim ways they show their devotion, for it was human prayer that gave them life. So really, they should just be grateful to exist. Suddenly, a brilliant light cuts through the night. It erupts with a silent cosmic boom. Eidos looks up, confused by the sudden arrival. A sharp voice cuts through the air, mocking his busy worshippers. She reveals herself, the Greek god, Nemesis. Eidos' expression darkens as he recognizes his rival. He warns her that she's trespassing on his territory. She plays it off cool, as if she just forgot the property line. But she flips the accusation right back at him, insisting that he knows exactly what she means. She's talking about the souls of her followers, accusing him of consuming them for himself. She reminds him of the innocent lives lost to his name. A deity, she sneers, who can only feed on fresh sacrifices. Eidos tries to deflect the blame, insisting he has no control over his worshippers' actions. But Nemesis finds his excuse laughable. To her, he's nothing but a pathetic god enslaved by mortals. She summons a blade of pure energy, declaring that this is vengeance. The attack strikes home with brutal force, but it's his small companion, Io, who takes the fatal blow. She speaks of gods who are meant to benefit the world, deities who bring dreams, rain, and freedom, and those who forge the very universe itself. But she demands to know what purpose he serves. Eidos remains silent, his gaze turning cold. She claims all he does is kill and destroy, bringing nothing but fear and ruin in his wake. She questions why a god like him even exists. Eidos gently picks up what's left of his only friend, and with a chilling look, he says it must be nice to have statues and temples built in your name, to be offered fruit and wine instead of screaming victims. He repeats her question, why does a god like him exist? And admits that he doesn't have an answer. But Nemesis isn't here for a therapy session. She unleashes another barrage of attacks. The force sends him flying backward. She hovers above, calling him a coward for not fighting back. She dives in for the final blow, screaming about destruction, and asking if that's all he's good for. Her blade glows with a venomous green light, and she drives it straight into Eidos' side. But instead of pain, she's met with a chilling grin. Nemesis seems intrigued by this sudden change. Eidos' eyes burn with a dark purple energy. He thinks of the vile worshippers who gave him life, and the pointless existence they condemned him to. Something inside him finally snaps open. He catches her arm, his grip like iron. Nemesis leaps back, genuinely interested now. She reveals she's asked around the other pantheons, and no god has ever seen a power like his. She dares him to show her what he's got. Eidos raises his hand, commanding the darkness to rise. Vicious spikes of shadow burst from the earth. Nemesis is forced to leap out of the way. Eidos descends upon her, finally done playing punching bag. Their energies clash in a violent burst. The impact sends a shockwave through the night, but Nemesis just smirks, asking if shadow manipulation is all he can do. Eidos scoffs, calling her taunt pathetic. But Nemesis explains that her power is vengeance itself. The more she despises an enemy, the more devastating her blows become, and she asks if he'd like a personal demonstration. Eidos barely has time to react, before she lands a brutal punch right to his jaw. She follows up with a powerful kick, sending our boy flying through the forest canopy. He crashes into a distant mountain with a thunderous boom, and slams back down to earth, carving a trench in the ground. Eidos lies broken on the forest floor, admitting the pain. He thinks how easy it would be to just give up, to simply let his miserable existence end here. But seeing Nemesis approach, he realizes he's not ready to die. Just then, his hooded worshippers emerge from the trees. Eidos sees them, recognizing the very people who created him. He embraces his title as the Devourer, inhaling their dark devotion. His eyes flare with a renewed, chilling purpose. Nemesis watches, confused, wondering if he's feeding on their fear. Eidos turns to face her, asking if she's truly the goddess of revenge. He tells her she should have known better than to butcher his only friend. Nemesis looks up, completely stunned by this new form. As shadowy tendrils rise, she readies her blade. She scoffs, asking if he thinks these weak shadows will actually make a difference. Eidos calmly agrees, which is never a good sign. He explains that his power isn't shadow manipulation at all. It's the power of creation. He manifests darkness and negative emotions into being, and make them a reality. He says she was foolish to attack him in his own domain, a place where fear is always in abundance. Now he gathers that dark energy into his palm. He addresses the Greek goddess of vengeance directly. Declaring that this is his revenge, he tells her to have a taste of what she dishes out. A brilliant beam of golden energy erupts from his hand. The blast engulfs Nemesis completely. A massive explosion tears through the night. The golden light of his attack tears through the air. The explosion echoes across the entire forest. Inside the blast, Nemesis finally understands the feeling. The very taste of revenge. Eidos looks at the aftermath, admitting revenge is a bit overrated. But as he looks at his hands, he thinks perhaps there's more that needs to be purged from this world. His hand is stained red, a familiar, grim sight. But the stain dissolves into shadow as his form recedes. He returns to his original self, admitting he has something to say. He turns to his worshippers, admitting that this revenge feels hollow. 5 months drift by in silence. The heavens churn onward, uncaring. We find Eidos lying in a field, lost in thought. The fire he once felt has faded to embers. He barely musters the energy to look up, as a new visitor arrives, asking about Nemesis. It's the Greek god Hermes, and he's clearly not here to make friends. Eidos simply asks if he's come to kill him. But Hermes smiles, promising something much worse. Hermes reveals he saw what Eidos did to his own followers. He explains that without prayers or sacrifices, Eidos will simply fade away. But apparently, a higher power has other plans for him. Eidos cynically asks if it's a public execution. Hermes grins, calling it a game instead. Our boy seems less than thrilled by the idea. A game to decide if he lives as a god or dies like a mortal. This, Hermes declares, is his punishment for killing Nemesis. The mention of a higher god seems to strike a nerve, and Eidos launches himself forward in a burst of dark energy. But Hermes seems completely unfazed, even pleased by the attack. Golden lightning crackles around his hand, as he declares he gets to deliver this punishment personally. Before Eidos can even blink, Hermes grabs him by the face. He unleashes his divine speed, dragging our boy along for the ride, and slams him into the ground with incredible force. The impact carves a massive trench through the forest, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and debris. The smoke clears, revealing the path of destruction. Eidos lies broken, as Hermes tells him he's lucky to be alive. Hermes casually mentions that Zeus is very keen on getting Eidos' head, but the king of gods insisted on using him for an experiment, as Eidos begins to rise. The messenger god's eyes flash, sensing the sudden movement. He realizes too late that Eidos is already behind him, but a new figure appears in a flash, stopping the attack cold. Both combatants are stunned, with Hermes recognizing the sharply dressed newcomer. This unknown divinity, Yura, explains he can't have Hermes killing a candidate for the god game. With a sinister smile, he asks if they don't all want this to be fun. Eidos isn't amused, demanding to know why he'd ever play along. He growls that in all his centuries of existence, he's only ever known torment from the other pantheons. He's always been utterly and completely alone. So why should he suddenly answer to some higher power's game? He roars in defiance, asking what any of them have ever done for him. But Yura calmly explains that's precisely the point. He tells Eidos that if he were to die tomorrow, neither the gods nor the human world would even notice. In short, our boy is completely expendable. But that very fact makes him the perfect candidate for the god game, a death game designed purely for the Pantheon's entertainment. Yura explains the game's purpose is to purge divinities, who no longer serve the new universe. Eidos quietly processes this grim revelation. He thinks back on his lonely existence, asking who they are to judge him. He snarls that the only one who can decide his fate is him, as his dark power erupts in defiance. But Yura seems completely unfazed by the tantrum. He calmly mentions that a higher power predicted this resistance, and unleashes a brilliant beam of light to put him in his place. The blast hits Eidos head-on, engulfing him completely. Yura's voice commands him to simply rest. As he invites Eidos to join his little game, Eidos' eyes flutter open slowly. He's greeted by a familiar, feathered face. He can't believe his eyes, whispering his friend's name. He realizes this has to be a dream. He calls out to Ao again, still in shock. Overcome with joy, he asks if his friend is truly alive. The little bird god simply caws in response. A single tear of relief rolls down Eidos' cheek. Eidos sits in an endless white void, glad he's not facing this alone. He rises to his feet, taking in the strange, empty space. Now sporting some fancy new antlers, he wonders where on earth he is. He remembers Yura's attack, and realizes this must be the death game. He tries to summon his dark magic, but can only conjure a pathetic wisp of energy. He looks around, completely bewildered by his powerlessness. Suddenly, a piece of paper flies past his face. It flutters away into the stark white emptiness. He snatches the paper out of the air. It's a profile, describing him as a god of darkness, who's now searching for the meaning of his existence. Itos crumples the note in his hand. He scoffs at the idea that they know him and tosses it aside. Just then, a single door materializes in the void. He and Io turn to face the strange new object. Our boy is already finding this whole situation annoying. It's a simple wooden door, an exit or an entrance. With no other options, he slowly walks toward it. He approaches the door, the only feature in this endless white. Itos can't shake the feeling that this is a very bad idea, but with no other choice, he reaches for the handle. The door swings open, revealing a path through the cosmos. He looks out at the star-dusted walkway, completely underwhelmed. He sarcastically wonders if a simple execution was too much to ask for. This whole game is already getting on his nerves. He steps through the doorway, leaving the white void behind, and the door slams shut, sealing his path back. Itos takes his first steps into the unknown arena. He walks the lonely path, another door waiting at its end, but he soon finds he's not the only one here. 4 contestants isolated on a cosmic stage. The first, a human named Natalia Williams, demands to know who he's up against. The second is a Slavic god, Chernobog, who seems disgusted by the company. And the third is a complete mystery, hiding behind a paper bag. Very intimidating. Itos looks over his competition, unimpressed by the freaks he's been paired with. Suddenly, a new voice echoes through the void, greeting the contestants. A sharply dressed figure appears, thanking them for their patience. He officially welcomes them to the first ever God game. He explains that the mortals have been chosen to compete for divine glory. Meanwhile, the gods are playing simply to avoid being erased from history. He warns them to play by the rules, but Natalio quickly interrupts. The human scoffs at the idea of this being a divine plan. He calls the game an insult and immediately tries to pick a fight with Itos. Yura calmly asks why he would find this insulting. He challenges the gods to prove their superiority over mortals by simply winning the game. Chernobog realizes the grim truth. The pantheons consider them all expendable. Yura confirms it, stating they are no longer needed in this universe. He challenges them to prove they're worth keeping around. Natalio, however, is still furious and confused by the whole situation. He even tries asking the paper bag-headed contestant for answers, getting only silence. But Yura raises a finger, demanding their attention. He announces that it's time to explain the rules. Itos listens, his mind racing over the term God game. He wonders, if this is truly meant to determine the value of a god, then why on earth would they rope mortals into it? Yura declares their first event will be a fun game of gladiator jousting. Chernobog immediately questions this, asking how it differs from any ordinary joust. Natalio mocks the Slavic god's appearance, who seethes in response. But Yura steps in, telling them to save it for the game. He explains the rules are simple. Just knock your opponent off the platform, and they can use whatever means necessary to win. Itos quickly realizes this is just a fancy way of saying that they're meant to murder each other. Natalio, ever the impatient one, demands to know who they're fighting. Yura explains that only 2 of them will advance to the next round, but as for who their opponent is, he'll leave that up to them. A timer appears in the void, giving them just 10 minutes to decide. Otherwise, he warns, they will all be eliminated. But just as the tension peaks, Yura has one last thought. With a clap of his hands, weapons of golden light materialize for each player. Natalio is shocked to find himself holding a divine chainsaw. Yura says this should help speed things up, as Natalio laughs maniacally. The paper bag contestant, however, gets a simple wooden plank. So, that's fair. Natalio immediately points and jeers, mocking his opponent's pathetic weapon. He then turns to the 2 gods, offering them an alliance. He suggests they team up and take out the paper bag freak first. Itos watches on, realizing this human has adapted to the death game far too easily. Chernobog notes that the paper bag contestant is acting more realistically, but he figures that fear makes him an easy target. The Slavic god then turns his attention to Itos, claiming they've met. Itos confirms it was a few centuries back. We get a flashback to Chernobog tricking him into holding up the sky, and another of him spilling wine on Itos at a wedding. Real classy. Chernobog just laughs it all off as ancient history. He suggests that as gods, they should team up against the mortals, appealing to Itos' desire to survive and get revenge. But Natalio interrupts, telling Deerman to ignore the bastard and join him. Natalio continues his tirade, calling Chernobog unsightly. Itos watches the petty argument unfold. He glances up at the timer, noting it's already counting down. He remains silent, considering the two terrible alliance offers. He turns to his only ally, asking Io for a recommendation. The little bird's eyes seem to glow with a silent suggestion. Io calls twice, confirming their target. Eidos smirks, saying he was thinking the same thing. Natalio's face twists in disbelief. Chernobog is equally stunned by whatever just happened. Eidos stomps his foot, getting the paper bag contestant's attention. He looks down and tells the cowering figure to get up. The mysterious contestant seems completely bewildered. He timidly asks if Eidos is really choosing him. Both Chernobog and Natalio erupt in protest at his decision, but Eidos calmly states that for him, the choice was easy. He calls out Natalio for being too eager to claim a life, and he calls out Chernobog for his arrogant divine pride. He says if this game is about deciding who's worthy of living, he doubts either of them are before turning to his new partner, but the paper bag contestant finally speaks up. He says he knows what it's like to have others take from you, to be looked down upon, and to be constantly underestimated. He asks Eidos if that feeling of frustration is familiar. He offers a hand, suggesting they make the others pay for their arrogance. Eidos' eyes glow, asking if his new ally is truly ready to survive. The paper bag contestant accepts, his grip firm. Yura watches from the sidelines, calling it a good choice. Eidos puts a hand on his partner's shoulder, admitting he knows that feeling all too well. But he senses there's more to Eidos than meets the eye. Even if he's currently wobbling with a plank for a weapon, Eidos figures at least this one isn't as talkative as the others. Chernobog scoffs at the idea of choosing a human over a god. He finds the very notion utterly disgusting, and declares it's no wonder the pantheons want him gone. With the timer ticking down, Natalio turns to Chernobog. He begrudgingly offers an alliance, which the god sarcastically accepts. The two pairs now stand on opposite sides of the arena. Eidos asks his new partner if he's afraid, and gets an honest answer. The paper bag contestant admits he's not sure he can do this. He confesses he's never hurt anyone before. Eidos thinks this is a pretty standard reaction for a mortal, but that's exactly why he chose him. All of those negative emotions, that overwhelming fear, are a power source he can draw from. Chernobog scoffs, figuring out his plan. He sneers that Eidos must have a death wish, and Eidos calmly agrees that he does. But he's not about to die just because some other god told him to. He declares he'll go down on his own terms, but Chernobog charges in, insisting Eidos has no say in the matter. Eidos knows the Slavic god is exploiting his one-armed weakness. With no room to move, he's also worried about his partner. He realizes he has no choice but to engage, and he meets Chernobog's charge with his own power. The Slavic god seems to find this incredibly amusing. He mocks Eidos for daring to fight him with that disadvantage. He tells Eidos to save his strength, and just let him take out the useless human first. Eidos reels back from the blow, spitting blood. He warns his new partner to stay out of the fight, insisting that he needs him alive for his plan to work. Natalio watches in awe as the platform shakes from their divine power. The paper bag contestant stands firm, surrounded by Eidos' dark energy, and just like that, the bag begins to tear open, revealing a horned, grinning god who mocks Eidos for having no worshippers. He sneers about Eidos having no monuments, no sacrifices, and no history. He lands a devastating blow, calling our boy's existence a stain on the world. And with a chilling smile, he asks why a god like him even exists. The blow connects with devastating force. Eidos is sent sprawling across the platform. Chernobog tells him to stay down and enjoy the show, because he's about to tear his partner to pieces. Real sportsmanlike. The Slavic god turns his cold gaze toward his next target. His eyes burn with a cruel, unwavering light. Lying on the ground, Eidos admits that Chernobog is right. He reflects that all he's ever done is cause suffering. For so long, he believed saving Io was his only good deed. A flashback reveals his friend in a much grimmer form, but watching the strong pick on the weak reminds him of the torment the other gods always put him through. And as he grabs Chernobog, he realizes something. Maybe he can do one more good thing before he dies. His dark energy surges with a newfound purpose. He unleashes every last bit of his power in a single punch. A final, desperate attack fueled by centuries of rage. The platform cracks under the sheer force of his will. He collapses, admitting that was the last of his prayer. Now completely drained, he can only hope it was enough. Chernobog looks down, seemingly unfazed by the desperate attack. But the Slavic god hits the deck, his body cracking under the pressure. Eidos' dark energy courses through him, shattering his divine form. He grits his teeth, unable to withstand the final blow. But Eidos realizes with dread that he's made a critical mistake. His partner frantically tries to warn him of a new danger. He turns just in time to see Natalio grinning like a madman. So much for that alliance. The chainsaw-wielding mortal leaps into the air, ready to strike. He identifies Eidos as the biggest threat on the board. and figures taking him out now will secure his victory. Eidos can only watch as Natalio descends upon him. He knows he's too weak to move in time. But the final blow never lands. His partner leaps in, blocking the chainsaw with his wooden plank. Eidos stares up, completely stunned by the save. Natalio can't believe his divine weapon is being stopped by a piece of wood. He seethes, calling out the mysterious paper bag man. But the silent contestant doesn't even flinch. Natalio is completely baffled by this sudden show of strength. He realizes with a shock that he can't even move him an inch. He realizes his opponent is an immovable wall. His partner nervously asks Eidos for another magic blast, but Eidos admits he doesn't think he can win this fight. He explains that there's a limit to his power. Normally, gods draw strength from their worshippers' prayers, but he was born with the ability to convert negative energy. Without either source, using his divine arts is nearly impossible. He explains that his partner's fear fueled that one attack, but it was the very last of his prayer. His partner panics, but Eidos insists he's still figuring it out. Natalio interrupts, furious at being ignored. He revs his chainsaw, enraged that they've turned their backs on him. He lunges at the paper bag contestant, mocking his one successful block. But the plank holds firm once again, stopping the divine weapon cold. Natalio is sent flying back, screaming that weaklings should know their place. He stares in disbelief, his rage mixing with genuine confusion. The paper bag contestant realizes his own strength wasn't just a fluke. As Natalio attacks again, the plank begins to splinter under the assault. Eidos watches intently, asking Io if he sees it too. He notes that every time his partner swings that plank, the harder he seems to hit, the plank connects with the chainsaw in a flash of light. Natalio's eyes widen in complete disbelief. He's sent stumbling backward from the sheer force, and finds himself knocked down to one knee. The mortal is completely baffled, wondering how he was overpowered. But instead of attacking, his opponent offers a hand, asking if he's okay. The paper bag contestant seems just as surprised by his own strength. Eidos realizes the weapons Yura gave them must have special properties, but his partner reflects that a powerful weapon is useless if you're unwilling to wield it. Natalio's eyes narrow with a cruel understanding. He decides his opponent will have to learn this lesson the hard way, and swings his chainsaw in a brutal bloody arc. The blade cuts deep, stunning the paper bag contestant. Natalio laughs, mocking him for offering help to an enemy. He reminds his victim that this is a fight to the death. He tells him if he's not prepared to kill, he should just give up. The two clash again, plank against roaring chainsaw. The paper bag contestant thinks it makes sense that he'd be the first to go, but even so, he declares he doesn't want to die here. The plank connects with a resounding crack. Eidos looks up, telling his partner to fight back. As Chernobog crashes to the platform, the paper bag contestant is stunned. Eidos rises, telling him he can either accept what others expect or defy it. He says he already made his choice when he picked him as a partner, but his partner asks what he's going to do now. The silent contestant seems to ponder this question. Just then, Natalio charges in for a surprise attack. His fist connects with a brutal blue-tinged impact, but Eidos' hand shoots out, catching the blow mid-swing. But Chernobog grins, telling Eidos he should have finished the job. His body begins to shake and reform. As his divine form cracks and reassembles, he reveals a terrifying new form, promising payback in full. Eidos and his partner are stunned as Chernobog mocks his poor strategy. The Slavic god boasts that he still has plenty more to show them. Eidos is completely caught off guard by this sudden turn. He hurls the plank at Eidos, ordering the human to dispose of his partner. Natalio turns to his opponent, glad to finally have no more interruptions. He revs his chainsaw, declaring only one of them will leave here alive. The paper bag contestant realizes Eidos was right. Everyone expects him to be the first to die. But as he grips his plank, he wonders if it has to be that way. He knows that to survive here, he needs to change. We flash back to a painful memory of him being beaten down. He remembers the feeling of helplessness and disgust. As a group of bullies stood over him, mocking his appearance, one of them offers a solution with a cruel grin, telling him they can't stand to look at his face anymore, and hands him the very paper bag he wears today. Well, that's just mean. They threatened him, warning him to never show his face again. The lead bully taunted him, daring him to try on the bag. With trembling hands, he slipped it over his head. His tormentors erupted in laughter, because high school is just the best. Their cruel voices echoed in his memory, calling him a loser. But back in the present, his eyes fill with a new resolve. He realizes that to survive, he must do whatever it takes. With the timer ticking down, he leaps into action against Natalio. He swings his plank with a surprising, desperate force. Natalio brings his chainsaw down, ready to end the fight. Natalio puts all his weight into the attack, his chainsaw roaring. But the paper bag contestant meets the blow head-on, a strange aura flaring. The plank connects with the divine weapon in a shower of sparks, and Natalio is sent stumbling backward, completely shocked by the force. He realizes his opponent isn't just sturdy, he's also surprisingly quick. He might not have any formal training, but this is clearly not his first rodeo. The silent contestant just stares back, his resolve unshaken. But his attention is suddenly drawn to the other side of the platform, where Eidos is taking a brutal beating from Chernobog's new form. He wonders desperately how he can possibly help his partner. Natalio revs his chainsaw, his eyes burning with rage. But the paper bag contestant meets the attack head-on. He tells Natalio he knows exactly what kind of person he is, the kind who loves to belittle others, just like his old tormentors. He remembers their cruel, mocking laughter, the kind of bully who thrives on making others feel small. He admits that all his life he's done nothing but suffer, because he never had the courage to fight back. But Eidos' simple act of trust changed something inside him. And if he's going to die here, he's going down swinging. With a new resolve, he meets the chainsaw head-on. Natalio puts all his weight into the attack, but the blow is somehow stopped cold. The mortal is completely stunned by this turn of events. He wonders how this easy target is suddenly radiating a terrifying blue energy. Turns out the quiet ones are always the scariest. The paper bag contestant winds up for a punch and sends Natalio flying across the entire platform. The bully skids across the ground, unable to stop his momentum. He desperately claws at the edge, barely saving himself from elimination. Natalio hangs on for dear life, his fingers digging into the stone. He curses his luck, realizing just how close he is to elimination. But his opponent walks over, looming above him. The paper bag contestant radiates a power that is anything but human. Natalio quickly changes his tune, appealing to their shared humanity. He even suggests they team up against the gods. A real change of heart. But his desperate plea is met with cold, silent judgment. The contestant brings his foot down with brutal finality. Natalio's eyes widen in shock and pain. And with one last scream, the bully is sent falling into the abyss. Natalio screams, pleading for his life as he plummets, but his opponent just watches, his resolve hardening. Meanwhile, Chernobog finally seems to understand something. Eidos looks down, telling the Slavic god that he's afraid. His voice is calm, almost gentle. He admits that he's scared too. A real heart-to-heart moment. Chernobog looks up, completely bewildered by this confession. He realizes Eidos is drawing power from his partner's fear. The Slavic god's eyes widen with rage, and he lunges at the paper bag contestant, screaming in fury. Chernobog screams in pure, unadulterated rage, but his opponent thanks him for being their second battery. His hand tightens, channeling the Slavic god's fury. Yura watches, impressed by the mortal's sudden cruelty. He admits that he's starting to like this one, but he wonders if it's enough to truly turn the tide. We flash back to a small, glowing creature approaching a much larger beast. Eidos, in a wilder, more monstrous form, consumed by darkness. A god lost to his own chaotic power. And back in the present, the clock is still ticking down. A memory of a small, glowing Io approaching Eidos' monstrous form. Back in the present, Eidos reaches out, his power surging. Chernobog just grins, confident in his overwhelming strength. Yura watches on, looking as entertained as ever. But Eidos feels his power return just in the nick of time. He clenches his fist, gathering the borrowed energy. He knows that now. It's finally his turn to fight back. He flips through the air, his body crackling with dark power, and lands a brutal kick right in Chernobog's smug face. Chernobog is completely stunned by the sudden reversal. Eidos unleashes a brutal flurry of kicks, not giving him an inch. The final blow sends the Slavic god crashing to the ground. The platform cracks under the strain as his partner looks on in shock. Yura watches, admitting he was curious why Eidos was allowed a companion. He initially believed Eidos and Io were two separate beings, but now he understands they are two halves of the same whole. A god so tormented by loneliness that he split himself in two, and only by reuniting can he access his true power. His partner calls it a smart move, as Eidos explains the fusion was fueled by Natalio's fear. But Eidos reminds him they're running out of time. He asks his new partner if he can keep up. The paper bag contestant trembles but agrees to try. Eidos accepts this, turning to face the real threat. Chernobog roars in fury, calling them both freaks. He mocks Eidos as a god who only brings suffering, and his partner as a mortal too afraid to show his face. He declares that the universe would be much better off. If the two of them would just die already, someone's got a flair for the dramatic. But Eidos is already preparing his next move. Eidos tells his partner to get ready for the counterattack, but he's immediately sent flying backward across the platform. Chernobog unleashes a wave of raw, divine power. As he soars through the air, Eidos admits that if he died here, he probably wouldn't be too upset about it. But the thought of being killed by scum like this is enough to make him want to fight even harder. Their powers collide in a blinding explosion of energy. The paper bag contestant braces himself against the shockwave. Chernobog reels back, wondering how a mere human could possess such strength. The platform itself begins to tilt from the impact. Eidos realizes the arena is shifting in their favor. Chernobog can only watch in disbelief, as Eidos lands another brutal punch, and his partner rushes in to follow up the attack. The Slavic god is completely overwhelmed by their teamwork. He takes a solid blow from the paper bag contestant, wondering how he's being overpowered. Eidos lands a final, devastating blow to his chest. With the clock ticking down, Chernobog screams in frustration. He can't believe these two were supposed to be weak. With the clock ticking down, he wonders why he can't win. Eidos and his partner prepare for another combined assault. He roars in frustration, unable to comprehend his failure. Another brutal blow lands, shaking the Slavic god. He refuses to accept that he could possibly lose to these two. He reminds himself that he is the almighty Chernobog, and he won't be defeated by a couple of nobodies. Someone's ego is taking a hit. But Eidos unleashes a final, desperate blast of power. The attack engulfs Chernobog in a storm of dark energy. Eidos asks how it feels to be his new battery. The mighty Slavic god is reduced to a terrified mess. He desperately pleads for his life. He apologizes for ever underestimating Eidos. He even tries to appeal to their shared godhood. He asks what the other pantheons will do if Eidos kills him here. Eidos just smirks, knowing the answer is absolutely nothing. He unleashes a final devastating blast of energy. He asks Chernobog why he thinks they're both in this game, because to the rest of the world, they're both completely expendable. The golden beam tears through the darkness. Chernobog can only stare as the energy consumes him. The platform is engulfed in a blinding flash of light, and the Slavic god's form is completely erased from existence. Eidos looks at his hand, admitting that was a bit stronger than he'd planned. He figures it's only natural that gods would fear death the most. The timer hits 0, announcing the survivors, Eidos and a guy named 4, Creative. Our boy looks on, the weight of the battle settling in. The mask on his face begins to crack and fall away, and his divine form dissolves back into shadow. The pieces of his mask dissolve into a cloud of purple energy, and from the fragments, his companion Io reforms with a triumphant cry. Eidos congratulates his friend on a job well done. The two stand together once more, separate but united. A slow, deliberate clap echoes through the void. Yura floats above, admitting he's genuinely surprised by the outcome. He seems thoroughly entertained by the whole ordeal. He congratulates Eidos for winning against a superior god without any prayers. He then turns his attention to the other survivor, who's still shaking. Yura's gaze fixes on the paper bag contestant with a curious look. He calls the paper bag contestant particularly interesting, a comment that leaves both our winners a little confused. Yura announces that with the first round now concluded, a new door materializes behind the survivors. He tells them they may now proceed to the next stage. Eidos demands to know what that even means, but Yura just smiles, refusing to spoil the surprise. Gotta love a cryptic host. He simply tells them to find out for themselves. The door swings shut before they can ask any more questions. His partner realizes they don't really have a choice, do they? He states the obvious, they're nothing more than prisoners here. But he's not ready to die and vows to keep fighting. He thanks Eidos for showing him how, standing at the door, he promises to never forget this. Eidos just grins, telling him not to give him so much credit. He insists that his partner was the one who saved himself, and with that the door slams shut. So much for new friends. Eidos turns his attention back to the void, calling out for Yura. Meanwhile, Io flies down to a piece of Eidos' old cloak. The little bird picks up the tattered remnant of his past. He warns Yura to choose his next words very carefully. With a cold glare, he demands to be sent home. But Yura just scoffs, asking if one victory has made him arrogant. A sudden, unseen force strikes out from the host, and Eidos is sent stumbling backward from the blow. Yura appears before him, telling the pagan god to remember his place. Eidos seethes, realizing that even if they fought here, without a source of prayer or fear to draw from, he stands no chance against the game's host. Yura tells him not to worry, as he won't be joining his new friend. He'll be joining the other winners, Yura explains. Eidos seems confused by the statement. The host simply confirms his words. But he has one last piece of advice. He tells Eidos to at least try and mingle, and with a snap of his fingers, our boy is sent flying. Yura's voice echoes that his life depends on it. He crashes hard at the end of the long fall, and finds himself in a room with the other contestants. He gets to his feet, Already annoyed with his new company, he finds himself in a grand hall which he dubs the box. He's surrounded by other divinities who don't look too friendly. Two of them whisper, wondering how a participant is also a sponsor. Eidos is completely lost, having no idea what they mean. Suddenly, a new voice booms through the hall. A new host appears, welcoming them all to the god game. He introduces himself as Anansi, the trickster god, and reveals the grand prize. Any wish. Eidos is stunned by the revelation as Io caws in excitement. His little friend seems to have an idea, and Eidos realizes that with a wish, he could change everything. He looks up at the one who wields all that power, the one who runs this entire game, the figure simply known as God. The supreme being welcomes the assembled deities, and Anansi gets the crowd hyped for the main event. The pantheons roar in approval, ready for the show. Eidos watches on, completely baffled by the spectacle. Divinities from every corner of existence are gathered here. He wonders if everyone here is a contestant, but quickly dismisses the thought. A new voice calls out, recognizing the lone deity. He reveals himself as Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. He smirks, finding a prayerless god to be a rare curiosity. Eidos listens as Hades questions what a god is without believers. He answers his own question, calling him nothing but a lost idea. But he admits Eidos is lucky to have his unique power. Otherwise, he never would have seen that impressive fight against Chernobog. Eidos points out that he doesn't seem very upset about Nemesis. He reminds Hades of the goddess of vengeance he defeated, and asks why he isn't more concerned since they're from the same pantheon. Hades smirks, noting that Eidos doesn't seem too upset. He admits Nemesis was a bit erratic anyway. Besides, he clarifies, she was a champion of Zeus, not him. He then points out that the show is about to begin. Eidos realizes there's some serious family drama in the Greek pantheon. He asks what's happening, and Hades just tells him to watch. Anansi's voice booms, announcing the first contestants for sponsorship. The first is a legendary German warrior, clad in heavy armor. He carries a sword that's almost as big as he is. A warrior famous for slaying a dragon or two, casual stuff. Anansi introduces the first champion, Siegfried the Dragon Slayer. He then moves on to the next mighty contestant, the legendary Japanese heroine, Tomoe Gozen. Hades notes that these are some of the best warriors available. One goddess immediately decides to sponsor Siegfried based on his looks. Priorities, I guess. Her companion calls her foolish, preferring a more strategic choice. Eidos is still trying to wrap his head around the term sponsors. Hades confirms it, explaining that the contestants will be competing, while the gods simply bet on who they think will win. When Eidos asks what they're betting, Hades reveals a glowing chip. Hades explains the chips are based on a god's prayer and active worshippers. The more chips a god bets on a champion, the more of their divine power that champion can borrow. He then taunts Eidos, who obviously doesn't get any. Tough break. Eidos questions the system of borrowing power. Hades clarifies that by betting on a candidate, a sponsor can lend a part of their divine art to their champion. He even provides a helpful diagram. More coins equals more power. He adds that gods can spread their bets across multiple champions, but warns them to choose carefully, since so many are competing. The goddess in green casually mentions she's shopping for a champion. Anansi then introduces the next contestant, a real wild card. Eidos listens as the host reveals the kid doesn't even have a name. Hades smirks, suggesting they just use his nickname for now. Anansi presents the quiet fighter who stood against Chernobog, the one and only Four. Truly inspired naming. Four nervously offers a timid hello to the crowd, and is met with a wave of complete and utter silence. The other gods can't believe this is the one who beat Chernobog, but Anansi hypes him up as a god slayer, as Four tries to share the credit. The crowd erupts in protest, with one god offering a bounty on the weakling. The other gods join in, their voices a chorus of threats and insults. Eidos watches the spectacle, remaining silent. A new green-clad god asks if he and Four are friends. Eidos bluntly denies the connection. He thinks back to their fight, to the desperation in his partner's eyes. He remembers how they fought simply to survive, and tells the god that's all there was to it. His new acquaintance flashes a grin that's all teeth. Totally trustworthy. Anansi tries to quiet the unruly crowd, but the green-clad god interrupts with a sharp-toothed grin. Anansi turns, completely caught off guard by the sudden outburst. The mysterious god holds up a single coin, declaring he wants to sponsor the boy. The rest of the crowd looks on, completely bewildered by the choice. Eidos watches this unexpected turn of events, his expression unreadable. Anansi just laughs, calling the god a jester for his ridiculous suggestion. But the green-clad god insists he's never been more serious. He declares he's putting all of his prayer on the boy in the paper bag. The announcement sends a ripple of shock through the entire hall, and the other gods erupt in laughter, calling him mad for betting it all on a weakling. Anansi tries to calm the jeering crowd of deities. He turns to Hades, asking if he heard that correctly. The green-clad god confirms it with a sharp-toothed grin. He says he has a good feeling about this one, as Four looks on nervously. Etos questions the wisdom of betting all his prayer on a single champion. The god acknowledges the risk but asks what happens if he's right. Etos can only conclude that this guy is completely insane. Down on the stage, Four looks up, recognizing his new sponsor. He calls him the god that saved him, much to Etos' confusion. Our boy and Io have absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Down on the stage, Four bows deeply, thanking his new sponsor. The green-clad god teases Etos, saying they must be friends after all. Anansi tries to move the show along, as the god notes that at least Four has a chance now. He asks if Etos is leaving, and our boy confirms it's a waste of time to stay. He turns to go, asking if his new acquaintance is done as well. Another goddess seems surprised that he's not sticking around for the show, but as a new figure peeks from a doorway, Io urges him to leave. The mysterious observer watches with glowing, predatory eyes. Etos finds a door and swings it open without a second thought. He's greeted by a hallway lined with giant blades. Oh good, more death traps. Etos looks out into the cosmic void, stating the obvious. He realizes there's no real way out of this god game. He reflects on its true purpose, to purge unworthy deities. He thinks back on the first round, remembering how their powers were nullified. He knows if Chernobog had been at full strength, they would have been toast. He understands the cruel logic. Any god who lost was simply deemed unworthy. But he admits there's a silver lining to this whole death trap. The grand prize is a single all-powerful wish. He thinks of the kind of god he is and the grim worshippers who created him, and realizes that with a wish, he could change everything for himself and Io. A new voice asks if he's truly that ashamed of his own existence. The host steps through a doorway, calling his desire pitiful. He questions Etos' confidence after surviving just one round. The host leans in, telling our boy to trust him, because this game is far from over. He opens a new door, announcing the start of round 2. Meanwhile, back in the grand hall, the sponsorships are getting heated. Two powerful figures watch from the crowd, with one calling his brother a fool. We meet Zeus and Poseidon, who seem unimpressed by the spectacle. But someone taps the king of Olympus on the shoulder. It's Hera, the Greek goddess of marriage, and she'd like a word. Poseidon tells his brother to keep him posted on any interesting developments. Zeus asks what she wants, but Hera is not impressed by his busy schedule. She scolds him for dawdling while she's left to manage yet another crisis. And from the looks of it, she's about one crisis away from filing for divine divorce. Zeus sighs, asking what the emergency is this time. She reminds him of the rogue god who's been killing their kind. Zeus casually tries to recall the pagan deity's name, getting it completely wrong. Hera is furious that he can't even remember the name of his daughter's killer, but Zeus scoffs, certain that a weakling like Etos won't survive the game anyway. Hera concedes that Nemesis's death was a shame, but Zeus scoffs, refusing to mourn a god who lost to a prayerless nobody. She sighs in frustration, telling him he's missing the point as always. She argues that letting a minor pagan divinity get away with this means an Olympian must be the one to take his life. She reminds him they were lucky it was only one of his many children, and asks what happens if Etos decides to go after another one. She reveals that Etos has already clashed with their son, Hermes. Zeus seems surprised, but Hera confirms he sent Hermes to collect Etos. She insists that if they don't act, the other pantheons will see weakness. She warns they'll become the laughingstock of heaven. But Zeus has finally had enough of her lecture. He pins her against the wall with a thunderous crash. He agrees to handle it, but on his own terms. Hera seems to accept this, her anger subsiding. Meanwhile, Etos arrives in a beautiful, serene landscape. Yura explains that every divine participant must be shackled, and with that, he wishes our boy good luck and turns to leave. Etos is left completely bewildered by the sudden exit. He turns to find a new face. Helios, the Greek god of the sun. Helios comments on the beautiful scenery, but Etos finds it a bit too bright for his tastes. He realizes they must be in the land of the gods, a place he's never had enough prayer to be allowed to visit. He notes that it's just the two of them, completely alone, and a dark thought crosses his mind. A chance to escape. But Helios warns him it's not worth the effort. He explains that Etos' powers are severely limited here. In other words, our boy doesn't stand a chance. Besides, he admits he doesn't even want to be here. Etos reluctantly agrees with Helios' assessment. He can feel his divine power being suppressed, just like it was during the first round. He realizes it's the golden shackles that are holding him back. He glances over at his new companion, asking if the grand prize, the wish, is actually real. Helios just smiles, turning the question back on him. Eidos reasons that a god with that much power must be real. Helios gets a little too friendly, asking if the wish has lit a fire in him. But Eidos is more surprised that the sun god even knows his name. Helios boasts that he knows everything under the sun. A real comedian, this one. Eidos is not amused, telling the sun god to keep his hands to himself. But he admits that he has to say, once his eyes adjust to the blinding light, the scenery isn't all that bad. He then asks if it's just him, or if the sun is getting closer. Helios just laughs, pointing to the sky as fiery steeds appear. He explains that the sun is, in fact, getting closer, because it's being pulled by his own divine horses, and with that, he hints that Eidos can probably guess the next game. Helios leans in, asking Eidos a personal question. He wonders if our boy has ever been in a chariot race. Eidos looks out at the floating islands, completely baffled by the suggestion. Helios smirks, guessing he was never invited to the cool kids' table. He explains that gods will pick 2 mortal teammates based on their prayer levels, and since Eidos has no worshippers, he gets to pick last. So much for a fair start. Eidos realizes each team will consist of 1 god and 2 humans. Helios grins, ready to explain the fun part of the game. Eidos looks out at the other islands, each one holding a rival team. The rules are simple. 1 person steers while the other 2 defend the vehicle. Helios explains that special infusions are scattered across the course. Touching one will grant their chariot a random power-up. He also casually mentions that murder is totally fair game. Eidos asks if this means the winners get to live. Helios confirms that a few top contestants will move on. And as for the rest, well, they'll be eliminated. He's way too excited to meet their teammates, much to Eidos' annoyance. With a snap of his fingers, 2 golden doors appear. He asks if Eidos isn't curious to see the mortals who will be fighting by his side. The first door opens, revealing a familiar paper bag-headed figure. It's For, his former partner, who seems just as surprised to be here. He erupts with joy, asking if they're really on the same team again, and leaps toward Eidos with a little too much enthusiasm. His graceful entrance ends with a spectacular faceplant. Eidos asks what he's doing, but For is just happy for the reunion. Helios laughs, assuming the 2 are already good friends. Eidos immediately denies it, while For happily agrees, so it's complicated. Eidos sighs, agreeing with Io that their 3rd member will be someone new. As the second door begins to open, a new figure emerges, her eyes glowing with a fierce light. She introduces herself as Tomo Gozen, the most feared female samurai. For is immediately terrified, while Eidos notes her powerful aura. He recognizes her as a legendary warrior from Japan, and wonders why such a hot commodity got stuck with the leftovers. The samurai stares Eidos down with an unimpressed glare. She scoffs at being paired with a 1-armed god, declaring them doomed. She then turns her scorn on For, calling him pathetic trash. Tomoe mocks him for being too scared to even show his face, and warns him to pull his own weight, or she'll let him die. He realizes her charming personality is why she's on their team. With the unlikely trio now assembled, Helios moves on. He announces it's time to meet the chariot they'll be defending. Eidos looks on, the golden shackles still binding his power. He looks up in genuine surprise, as 2 shadowy steeds emerge from the darkness, followed by a chariot with a very unique design. The entire gloomy ensemble materializes before them. Eidos is completely underwhelmed by their ride. He wonders aloud why their chariot looks so depressing. Helios laughs, explaining the chariots are linked to their captains, which he points out happens to be Eidos. Tomoe deadpans that this explains their gloomy ride. Helios climbs into his own chariot, eager to start the show. But Tomoe calls out, asking where the race even ends. For agrees, noting the lack of any visible track. Helios turns back, a smirk on his face. He reveals the racetrack is the entire world itself. He explains that this race has no finish line. Instead, the goal is to reach him the sun. For panics at the impossible goal, which Helios happily confirms. He finds a race to catch a star to be a perfectly fitting game for gods. As For questions the physics, Eidos reminds him they're talking to a sun god. Helios tells them to decide on a driver, since they're the last team. The unlikely trio stands together, ready for the race to begin. Yura's voice echoes through the sky, asking if they're prepared. He announces the start of round 2, explaining the sun chariot gets a head start. After that, Helios is forbidden from using any more power-ups. He turns to the other teams with a confident smirk, and with a cheerful wave, he wishes them all to have fun. How nice of him. The unlikely trio stands ready in their gloomy chariot. Helios roars with excitement, eager to begin the chase. Eidos just stares ahead, his mind on the game. And with a flash of gold, the sun god is off. 4 nervously takes the reins, looking completely lost. Tomoe is not impressed, demanding to know why he's just standing there. She tries to give him a crash course in chariot driving, but the shadowy steeds don't appreciate the sudden jerk. They take off with a violent lurch, sending the team flying, and their chariot immediately plummets out of control. So much for a strong start. Eidos just watches, completely unfazed by their nosedive. 4 frantically pulls on the reins, begging the horses to cooperate. The shadowy steeds finally pull up, saving them from an early elimination. Tomoe immediately scolds him for his terrible driving skills. The team stands together, a picture of dysfunctional grace. Eidos translates for the group, saying Io suggests they find a power-up. He explains that since Helios has a head start but can't use them, a speed boost is their only real chance to catch up. Just then, 4 spots a glowing infusion on an island below. He asks if he should try to steer them down to grab it, but 4 realizes if power-ups are the key to winning, they're about to have some very aggressive company. The rival team bickers, already a model of perfect cooperation. Eidos calmly notes that they're here to contest the power-up. Tomoe, however, looks completely unfazed by the threat. She orders 4 to get them closer, much to his terror. A brilliant blue energy swirls around her hand. As she explains, she just needs to be close enough. Both Eidos and 4 are stunned as she summons her weapon from thin air. With a new sense of purpose, 4 grips the reins and agrees. With a new sense of purpose, 4 promises to do his best. But one of the rival warriors points them out, announcing their approach. He readies his spear, vowing that this time they're finished. Tomoe stands ready, her feet glowing with a brilliant blue energy. She meets his attack head-on, calmly telling him she's sorry. But there won't be a this time. And with a single devastating slash, she cuts him down. Well, that was efficient. The scene flashes back to Eidos' past, recalling a particularly brutal sacrifice. He wonders why his worshippers ever thought that's what he wanted, and his companion Io lets out a sharp, affirming cry. He recalls that his worshippers never really spoke to him. They were always too paralyzed by fear. He remembers wondering if they'd ever meet someone who wasn't terrified of them, as Io agrees. He didn't know when that day would come, but he hoped it would be soon as Tomo cuts down her foe. Eidos is stunned by her incredible speed. He yells at 4 to get them under her position, but the other rival warrior is suddenly taken out from behind. So much for watching your partner's back. A new hand grips the weapon, revealing a third teammate. The third teammate, a horned warrior, lunges at Tomo. Tomoe realizes she's been caught completely off guard. The horned woman's eyes glow with a fierce blue light as she drives her spear forward with a furious cry. The weapon slams into the side of their chariot, but the warrior is stunned to find her attack was blocked. 4 timidly asks if he did a good job with his plank. Tomoe lands on the chariot, offering a rare compliment. She realizes he might just be the support she needs. The rival warrior can only stare in complete shock. The horned warrior roars in disbelief, but Tomo's gaze is cold and unwavering. She brings her blade down with brutal, decisive force. The warrior finds the idea of her own death laughable. Tomo simply calls her scum for getting in the way. But a new threat emerges from the rival team. A new god takes aim from above, his arrow glowing. Tomoe scoffs, clearly annoyed by the constant interruptions. But Eidos leaps in front of her, ready to take the hit. As the rival god unleashes a blast of divine energy, the blast hits Eidos, sending him and Tomo flying. The samurai looks on in shock as he falls past her. Eidos plummets, cursing the rival god for the cheap shot. The attacker lands on their chariot, ready for another strike. 4 nervously asks if he's getting better at this. The jury is still out. Tomoe screams at her divine captain to get them out of there. Their gloomy ride is pursued by a flaming rival chariot. A massive explosion of fire narrowly misses them. Tomo can't believe she's going to die with these two, and Eidos seems to agree. 4 points out that another team is about to reach the power-up first. Eidos tells 4 to keep going, ignoring his partner's hesitation. He asks a simple question. Does 4 still believe in him? The answer comes without a moment's doubt. With that trust as fuel, Eidos unleashes his dark power. Vicious tendrils of shadow erupt from the abyss below. The rival team can only watch in horror as the darkness rises. The tendrils wrap around their chariot, stopping them cold. Guess they didn't see that coming. Tomoe stares, completely stunned by this sudden display. She looks at Eidos, who now commands the shadows with his one arm, and she wonders what kind of god he truly is. The rival team panics, trying to cut themselves free from the shadows. Their divine captain looks on in complete disbelief. He thought Eidos didn't have any worshippers to fuel such an attack. Just then, a new challenger enters the fray in a flash of blue light. The rival god is still trying to figure out how Eidos is using his divine arts. He's completely caught off guard by the sudden arrival. and Siegfried's attack completely obliterates their chariot. Talk about a grand entrance. Back on their ride, the rest of the team turns to see what's happening. Eidos looks back, just as confused as everyone else. He realizes another team is closing in on them fast. Eidos asks Four about the power-up they just secured. Four manages to grab the glowing blue infusion. The energy surges through him, a power he can't control. He shouts that something is definitely happening. Eidos tells him to figure it out as Four strikes a dramatic pose. But Eidos has a sinking feeling that this new team, led by Artemis the Olympian Huntress, is here just for him. Meanwhile, Zeus complains about Hera's constant nagging. She confronts him about the team he's sponsoring in this round. He calls them an interesting bunch, including an ex-convict named Jaya and the legendary saint warrior Joan of Arc. But Artemis interrupts her father, Zeus, demanding to know why he's here. She seethes, asking if he really expected a warm welcome. Zeus calmly explains that it wasn't his choice to send her here. He claims there was a vote. Ah yes, divine democracy at its finest. Artemis mocks him for sacrificing his own daughter for entertainment. She calls his actions incredibly honorable, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But Zeus offers her a way out of this game. He asks her to kill a certain participant for him, in exchange for his help. Artemis's anger gives way to a cold, calculating smile. Artemis erupts in a furious laugh, reminding Zeus he put her here. She scoffs at the idea of making a deal for her freedom, and sarcastically calls him the father of the year. She points an accusing finger at the king of Olympus, roaring that he and all the other gods watching this game can take their offer and shove it. Zeus tries to reason with her, but she has no sympathy for Nemesis or Hermes. He asks if she's really willing to throw away her immortality. He reminds her that her chances of being the last one standing are slim to none, but she's already seen the cost of this game, where 1,000,000 souls have already fallen. Zeus insists that she won't survive without his help. He even offers to get sponsors for her mortal teammates. Her teammates urge her to listen, figuring one extra kill is no big deal. Joan of Arc agrees, seeing the logic in Jaya's point. She reminds Artemis that more sponsors would help them all. Artemis is clearly annoyed by the divine peer pressure, but she finally relents, agreeing to the hunt on one condition. She needs to know exactly who Zeus wants dead. Meanwhile, back in the race, Eidos is struck by a glowing arrow. The attack pins him to the chariot, his power flaring at the point of impact. Artemis takes aim, her voice a cold command. Tomo yells at Four to focus, but he seems a bit distracted. He admits he has no idea how to use this new power. Tomoe tells him to learn fast because they're running out of time. The Olympian Huntress prepares another shot from afar. A confident smirk plays on her lips. She decides Four will make a suitable target, but Eidos' eyes flare with a defiant purple light. She lets the arrow fly with deadly precision, but our boy leaps in the way, taking the full force of the blast. He taps into his divine art, unleashing his shadow manipulation to form a shield just in time. The barrier shatters, but it stops the arrow cold. Eidos seems just as surprised as anyone that it actually worked. Just then, Four finally figures out his new power-up. With a snap of his fingers, the steeds get a sudden boost, and their gloomy chariot rockets forward with incredible speed. Artemis watches them go, questioning if this is really her target. She scoffs, figuring a prayerless god will be an easy kill. Artemis tells her team to find an augmentation and catch up. She promises to get them all out of this game. Meanwhile, Atos' team rockets through the sky. Four is just glad he figured out the power-up in time, but he wonders how they'll ever catch the sun god. He asks his teammates why they're so quiet, only to see Eidos slumped over, an arrow in his chest. Our boy coughs, the wound clearly taking its toll. The arrow clatters to the floor, its job done. He clutches his chest as Io cries out in alarm. Eidos struggles to breathe, reassuring Io that he'll be fine. Tomo points out that he's lucky the power-up was a speed boost. She scoffs, wondering how a god could be so weak, that he's practically no different from a mortal. But Four immediately jumps to his defense. He insists Tomo hasn't seen what Eidos can do when he's fueled by the fear of his enemies. The legendary samurai, however, is not impressed. She looks down at the wounded god, saying he doesn't look so scary now. Eidos looks up, admitting she's got a point there. He explains his divine art converts fear into prayer. But since only Four was afraid back there, he didn't have enough power to fully block Artemis's arrow. Tomo finally understands why he's so weak without worshippers. Eidos then asks why she hasn't used her own divine power. Four asks for clarification, and Eidos explains the difference. Divine art is a god's own power, while divine power is borrowed. He reminds Four that Hades sponsored him, giving him access to it. Four is surprised, but Eidos says it all depends on the sponsor. Tomo watches them, finding their little partnership interesting. Tomoe wonders what his deal is, looking at the wounded god. She removes her outer cloak, a sudden unexpected gesture, and tosses the fabric over to Eidos. She tells him to wrap his own wound. Eidos seems genuinely confused by the act of kindness. She quickly clarifies she just doesn't want him bleeding on her. Sure, Jan. As Four gushes over the moment, she tells him to shut up. Eidos rips the cloth with his teeth and wraps it around his chest, admitting it's a deep wound. Eidos agrees with his little friend, a small smile on his face. He realizes with a jolt, this is the first time anyone's ever offered him something that wasn't a sacrifice. Tomoe snaps him out of it, demanding to know what's going on in his head. She immediately regrets her moment of kindness as they fly over a desolate wasteland. But their bickering is cut short by a sudden explosion in the sand. A massive, spiky basilisk erupts from the ground below. Well, that's not ideal. Tomoe warns them not to look into its eyes, as it can kill with a glance. But the legendary samurai's own eyes begin to glow with a brilliant blue light. She tells Four to get ready because she's about to handle this personally. Eidos questions her plan, doubting her weapon can even pierce the beast's hide. But Tomoe steps forward, a calm confidence in her stride. She explains that people always underestimate her true strength, and without another word, she leaps from the chariot to face the monster alone. Eidos is stunned by her reckless move, yelling at Four to follow her down. Four nervously grabs the reins, ready to dive. As Tomoe plummets, she reflects on how pitiful it all is. We flash back to her past, a life spent honing herself into a perfect weapon. But she was always just a blade, wielded to fight someone else's war. And when her master fell, her own purpose died along with him. She remembers wondering when her time would finally come, and what it would be like to live for herself. As she grips her weapon, she thinks perhaps this game is the answer she's been searching for. She calls upon the divine power of her sponsor, and unleashes a devastating attack called the Lion's Gale. The basilisk's eyes widen as the strike approaches, and with one clean slice, she tears right through the monster. Eidos and Four can only stare, completely speechless. Tomoe lands, wondering what all the fuss was about. She smirks, figuring it doesn't matter if she slays it first. And with a single brutal slash, she splits the beast in two. She lands gracefully, her divine power still swirling around her. Just in time for Four to swoop in for the pickup. The gloomy chariot soars away, leaving the desert behind. Tomoe scoffs, admitting she wasn't sure they'd actually catch her. Her teammates can only stare, completely dumbfounded. Four asks why she didn't use that incredible power against Artemis. But Tomoe just laughs off his very valid concern. She reminds them that even as teammates, they're still rivals. She reminds them that in the scope of this game, they're still enemies. Four tries to argue the point, but Eidos quickly cuts him off. He tells his partner that Tomoe is right to be cautious, but he warns her that hiding her true strength will get her killed. This is a death game against some of history's most formidable deities, and if she really wants to live, they don't have the luxury of holding back. Io lets out an angry caw, clearly seconding the motion. Eidos translates, saying his friend told him to be a team player. Tomoe finally relents, agreeing to be more transparent. But Four insists that if he's sharing, they have to as well. Eidos agrees to the deal, saying he has nothing to hide. He then tells Four to go first. So much for volunteering. Suddenly, we cut to a massive explosion in a German forest. A woman is sent flying, laughing with pure joy. We flash back to 500 BC, where a pale god looks on in horror. It's Belobog the White God, clawing at his face in despair. In his grief, he snaps the head off a small wooden figure. He looks on with cold eyes, saying this was inevitable. And a monstrous Chernobog appears, calling him brother. Chernobog tells his brother to be quiet. Belobog warns him about defying the new supreme being, but Chernobog accuses him of blindly following the pantheons. Belobog pleads with him to think for himself for once. Chernobog insists that this new god is a threat to them all. A golden light begins to emanate from Belobog's form. He claims he's always done his best to protect his brother, but Chernobog's rebellious nature always gets in the way. Guess some family drama is universal, and with that, he unleashes a powerful blast of light. He says this is why the heavens will never trust him. Chernobog lies defeated, branded as an outcast. Belobog can't believe the news of his brother's death. The Supreme Being confirms it, disappointed in his failed prediction. He calls the loss pathetic, especially to a god with no worshippers. This, he explains, is why he created the game in the first place. Belobog looks up, asking if he's been a loyal servant. The Supreme Being agrees, as Belobog volunteers to join the game. A manic look crosses his face, desperate to find this prayerless god. He scratches at his own skin, consumed by the need to find him. Someone needs a hobby. He looks out over a vast forest as Io flies into view. Four sits in silence, processing the fact that Chernobog is truly gone. Belobog wonders how he can possibly atone for his brother's death. His grief quickly turns to a burning, confused rage. Back on the chariot, Tomo shakes Four, calling him a useless paper bag. She demands to know how he's unaware of his own divine power. Four panics, admitting no one gave him an instruction manual. He then timidly asks if she could maybe teach him, but Ito steps in, telling them both that's enough. He tells Four to focus on steering and figure it out as they go. A helpful diagram explains that this borrowed power is just a fraction of a god's true art. Itos explains that was likely Tomo's first time using divine power, yet she wielded it with a natural, terrifying grace. He tells Four that the knowledge is already inside him. He just needs to find the courage to unlock it. But Tomo has had enough of the pep talk. She turns to Itos, demanding to know about his power. She asks if he feeds on all negative emotions, not just fear. She scoffs at the idea, calling his power twisted. A real people person, this one. She asks how she can trust him not to betray them for a power-up. And with a chilling look, he admits that she can't. But he promises her that if he were going to stab her, it certainly wouldn't be in the back. As Tomo glares, Four tries to break up the tense moment. Itos grabs her arm and she warns him to back off. Four waves his arms frantically, trying to get their attention. He finally yells, pointing them toward the path ahead. They fly over a frozen wasteland, littered with glowing power-ups, and the grim remains of other contestants, which Tomo quickly dismisses. She leaps from the chariot, focused only on the prize, and snatches a fiery red infusion from the air. Tomoe holds the fiery infusion, vowing to cut through any obstacle. She tosses the power-up to Four, who nervously catches it. But her attention quickly turns back to Itos. She tells him she's seen his type before, completely unimpressed, and questions what kind of wretched god wields such a twisted power. Itos agrees, admitting that for many, this game is his just desserts. He looks at his hand, confessing that for a long time, he's wondered if the world would be better without him in it. He clenches his fist, ready to accept his fate on his own terms. But if he has his way, he's going to win this whole thing. He declares he'd use his wish to change his destiny. Tomoe just pouts and he asks if that's not good enough for her. She reluctantly seems to accept his reasoning. He admits he's fought beside idiots with far worse ideals. A comment that gets a very mixed reaction from the team. Suddenly, a new voice finds it fascinating, that a god would hold such disdain for his own divine purpose. Itos turns, completely caught off guard by the newcomer. His teammates wonder where this winged god even came from. Itos can only stare as the new threat makes his grand entrance. The winged god grabs Itos' arm, his grip like a vice, and hurls him from the chariot, declaring that God was right. He sneers that a divinity like Itos has no place in this version of heaven. Itos' eyes narrow as he takes in the situation. He realizes they're being ambushed by other teams. Everyone decided to show up for a party, and they didn't even bring snacks. He thinks back to the weirdo who just attacked him, and realizes that shadowy form seems strangely familiar. The winged god easily dodges a blast from Four's new power-up. He nimbly avoids the fiery blast, countering the attack with a punch of his own. Itos watches from below, a bit confused, but a smirk crosses his face as he figures it out. Tomoe notes that these new augmentations are definitely something else.